One of the hardest things about being in any business is finding potential clients. And the worst is when you put a whole bunch of work in to creating a quote and you give it to the client and they go with someone else. That can be very frustrating and also can be very costly. As we all know in this business, a lot of things are done via lead generation. So you may have actually paid for that lead and then went out and spent time after hours or on a weekend away from your family to create a quote and an estimate. And when it doesn't get accepted, that can be a real bummer. Today, I talk with Ryan Shantz from SumoQuote. He helps solve this problem through a very interesting and unique marketing tool that allows you to create incredible proposals, great marketing, and win more deals, which is really what we all want in the long run. The reality is, as the market tightens, it's important to become more and more competitive. With SumoQuote, you can do that. So take a listen to this episode of Rooftalk by Elite Roofing Supply. All right, welcome back. Today, I have Ryan Shantz. Did I get it right, Ryan?
You got it right. Nailed it.
I got it right. Ryan Shantz, who is the CEO and founder of SumoQuote. And today we're going to talk a lot about estimation, how you can improve your share of the market, how you can land more customers, get better business by automating some of those things. Right now, as we know in this industry, you probably have the tear off three-part in your truck someplace that you tear off and you hand it to the customer with their estimate. Might not be the most professional thing out there, but it's what a lot of us do. So Ryan, welcome to the show. Tell us a little bit about your background. How did you get started in this SumoQuote game?
Thanks, Derrick. It's great to be here. In the SumoQuote game, you know what? I actually was an installer back almost 20 years ago. So I spent, a good year and a half installing. Realized that that's not what I wanted to do with my life. Roofing is hard work, and I wasn't against the work. I just, knew that my body would wear out and stuff. Went and did a few other things, but ended up, this is a bit of a random one. One of the things I did, I bought a denim line, a blue jeans company, and I ran a denim line. We manufactured in India, sold throughout North America. I sold that company to a company in Germany. And then from there, I got arm twisted to get back into the roofing industry again. So my partners and I, to this day, we still own a large roofing company up in Canada here. I ran sales there for years and trying to figure out how to differentiate ourselves and our product. That's what led me into building SumoQuote. So, yeah.
So how long ago was that? When did you start SumoQuote? When did this get started? And I know how it is with building software. It isn't like you just come up with the idea and immediately you're off to the races.
No, it takes some time, especially if you're going to do it well. So we spent about a year in development. We launched it almost 4 years ago now. And I think we're the number one sales enablement tool for roofing contractors out there now, which is really fun.
So explain SumoQuote, sort of your 30-second pitch. What is it? I tried to allude at the beginning of the show. This is like going from paper to digital. I'm sure you can give a better explanation than I can.
Sure, absolutely. I mean, SumoQuote makes it really easy for contractors to stand out from the competition. So we want to take something that's a commodity, shingles, and we need to convince the homeowner that you're going to give them a better experience, that they can trust you with their home. And so we help contractors, craft something really beautiful that stands out from everything else in the market. So we put their branding on it, their colors, it's all professionally graphic designed. The homeowner's house goes on the cover. There's marketing pages we can stitch in. There's photos of the project we can stitch in to help tell the story. It's good, better, best options, upgrade options, financing options, all digitally signed. So it's every element of a roofing sale that you would want to include to really enhance your brand and that buying experience for that customer. We build all of that stuff for you and then let you loose with it, and we just watch your sales rise because of it.
That's amazing. So I'd like to step back and sort of talk about what that process looks like and how that differentiates from what you do right now. But let's first talk about what are the results that come out of the back end, because as we know, we're likely heading into, a recession. Let's hope it's a short one. But that means that business isn't just about who answers the phone. Because I know here in Arizona, this was a struggle. We just remodeled our home. And in some instances, it was like whoever calls you back is the contractor you choose. we're not in that day and age anymore. We're in a day and age where it's going to become much more competitive, and you've got to offer more value to your customer. And you have to maybe, even instead of it just being about your qualifications, maybe you've got to try to make them sort of, and I've read some of the other things that you said about that sort of hero's journey, right? Of bringing them into that process and helping them understand not just that they're getting a new roof, but what that means for them in the long run. So let's talk a little bit about that. How do we see results? What change in results do we see by using a product like a SumoQuote product?
Yeah, and that's exactly what we were focusing on when we built this. So our challenge here was, we were fortunate enough to grow to be the largest residential roofing company in our province, but we had to compete with everybody. And so we had to figure out, how do we help the homeowner get a different experience from us, or know that they're going to get a different experience from us the whole way through. But that point of sale is that critical point in time where they're making that decision, right? And so we wanted to come in when contractors, and I kind of say, hey, look, honestly, it's difficult for homeowners to tell us apart, right? Like, we kind of all look the same, sound the same, like on most days even smell the same. Like, yeah. how do you really tell us apart from each other? And so when the homeowner is making that critical decision of who they're going to go with, if they've got that standard one page, from an Excel or Word doc, or from a generic CRM type of quote, and then they've got something that just screams professionalism, and they start thinking, well, if you're putting this type of craftsmanship into your quote, what am I going to get in with my production experience, my post-production, with my warranty, everything else? And you convince them with something like that, a tool like that, to trust you, and that they want to work with you. And then there's all the extra benefits of, and the average, I looked this up the other day, the average SumoQuote report right now comes back with, I think, $2,078 of upgrades sold with it. And so you're you're getting better close rates, better margins, more revenue, more upgrades. Like, it was kind of all those things. When we tested this out with our business, we saw our close rates go from 27% to 44%. And so it was a 63% increase, which was millions of dollars for our business. It had a massive impact for us. So it's pretty powerful. It's pretty fun when you get it dialed in for contractors to use it.
Yeah, and I mean, let's think about that for a minute. I mean, I know in although we live in a capitalist society, we always talk about playing nice, but you weren't playing nice there. You literally took business from other contractors that didn't have that advantage that you had, right? You landed more business out of the marketplace because you stood apart from them. And that is a really hard thing. And I think building trust with a customer is very, very difficult. A lot of times, and let's just be honest, for the last couple of years in some of the fast growing markets, trust wasn't even something that could be considered by the homeowner. It was, can this person, do they have availability? Can they get product? Are they willing to actually do the work? I mean, we've seen this happen so many times with homeowners here in Arizona, talking about how contractors ghost them. They call 3 or 4, one guy shows up, and on the back of a napkin gives you an estimate, and you gotta, it's like playing roulette in Vegas. You're like, I'm not sure or not. That era has changed. So now we really do have to stand apart from that. And moving from, what did you say? It was 27 to 44% close rate?
44% close rate.
That's incredible.
Yeah. With guys closing in the retail market over 50%, which was unreal.
And on top of that, like you said, they're also buying additional upgrades and accessories. So it's not just the roof that gets done, but because of that level of trust, and we've all had this happen in the contracting business, right? We're doing a project and the homeowner comes out and says, hey, can I show you something? Well, that means they trust you, particularly if they take you to the other side of the house and say, do you know how I can fix this? I mean, that is an absolute sign of trust, and trust is so important in this equation. So let's chat for a moment about what is the SumoQuote experience like? Right now, I might be in my truck. I'm writing something out on a piece of paper. Maybe I've advanced to having a laptop that I'm doing something in. I mean, honestly, a lot of the contractors I've worked with, I get the more advanced ones, I get an estimate from QuickBooks that right. Just has their logo in the right top hand corner and a link to pay. But I don't know anything about them. It's not personalized at all. I actually just had this happen recently where I got the estimate and had to call the guy back and say, this isn't for me. This is for somebody else. He's like, oh man, my fault, I mean, there's no indication that it went to the right person or anything like that. So let's talk about what is that like with SumoQuote? How is a day in your life different when you're using a product like this?
Yeah, so I'll back up half a step from that,
Okay.
and I'll just introduce something. Like, we obsess over this concept of helping contractors very simply and easily craft a buying experience for a homeowner. And I'll often compare it to when you look at something like Amazon. Amazon's got the most dialed in buying experience because they can't have a salesperson there, and they're the largest company in the world with this stuff, right? And so when you go onto Amazon, what do you look at and do? We got to get into the homeowner's mind with this stuff. So you look at, is it easy to buy? Can I sign this digitally? Do they make it easy for me? Are there photos? I want to be able to understand more of what's going on here. So do they help give me something visual to explain the job, the details, and what's going on with this? Can I see reviews maybe? Are there some marketing pages that you slide into a tool like SumoQuote that are very easy to use and help tell the story of the business and who they are and how they've been around and all of this stuff? You start looking at all of these elements and actually one of my favorites is with Amazon. If you've ever gotten to the bottom of an Amazon page on a product, did you know other people that bought this product also bought, and they show 2 or 3 other things. Here's the upgrade portion to this, right? Like, so you take all of these elements of this well-crafted buying experience and you just incorporate it into something like SumoQuote. So you asked about how does it affect their actual day. Now it's as simple as once you've got that buying experience crafted and you've got it scalable, because now all of your salespeople are selling in the same way on the same style of quote your proposal that you're using. Well, now it's as simple as punch in the measurements, or we integrate with Eagle View and Roofscope and a bunch of others. Punch in the measurements, apply it to your pre-built layout. SumoQuote can do all the calculations over to a per piece, per bundle, whatever it is. Drop in a couple of photos from Company Cam or Job Nimbus or any of our other direct integrations that we've got with this stuff. And instantly you've got a narrative that's custom to that homeowner, telling them the story of their project, of what's going on, and giving them all the options in the world, including financing and how they're going to walk through this, which is going to be more and more important with this recession coming up. So it's something that's built in minutes, not hours, but it's just fast, it's standardized. I'll give you one more thing with that. The impact of what that can do, our roofing company here, so I still help oversee it, but I don't work in it operationally at all. Right. But I love watching the numbers there. I mean, that was my team before, right? So we had a couple big hailstorms, 2020 and 2021. So leads were not the issue. We had lots. But I had two guys from the sales team last year. They each signed over $8 million of work last year, which was, you talk about the old days of $1 million producer or maybe a $2 million producer. They each sold over $8 million last year, which was just mind-boggling. But with good systems, processes, procedures, standing out, easy signing, easy upgrades, all of this stuff. Like it can be very powerful at the end of the day when you get this stuff working together for you.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I actually say in my consulting business, I say people only respect what you inspect. And when we're talking about that, a lot of times we're talking about manufacturing or going out and seeing the work that your people are doing and helping them understand how important that is to you. Because when you do that, they step up the level of work. I think the same holds true when you get a really well-crafted proposal. It completely, to your point earlier in this conversation, it makes me step aside and say, wow, if they're paying this much attention to this, like this isn't even their core business. Let's be honest. They're roofers. This is not what they do for a living. It's send out estimates, although it is, right? But it's not the work that they do. But seeing that really gives you a feeling of confidence. And I my wife and I, we don't always pick the cheapest, right? We usually pick the person that we feel like we can trust the most and we know we'll get the right work, because we've made that mistake in the past of picking the cheapest.
I think
it usually doesn't
have. So.
So from the homeowner's perspective, being able to stand aside and stand apart. And can you just imagine? I mean, think about this for a minute. If this is like the shell game, right, where you have 3 proposals laying in front of you, and one has a picture of your home and a detailed explanation of everything that's going to happen, and the other 2 are back of the napkin, who are you going with? I mean, you're just separating yourself from the pack.
Yeah, it was interesting. I had one of my sales guys. This was about 4 years ago, but he went out and it was a James Hardy job that he was selling. So it was about a $40,000 job. And the homeowner it was one of these homeowners. He had his little folder. He had like 8 quotes in there. And he was just like, talked to the guy on the phone and said, well, yeah, you can come out and present it. I know you've already put the work in for that, but we've kind of already made our decision, but come out anyways.
Yeah.
So he goes out there and he can see the quote from the company that this guy is saying he's going to go with. And after about 5 minutes with the guy goes, you know what? Actually, I'm going to go with you on this one. I mean, look at your quote. It's so much more detailed. Now, the interesting part is he could see the competitor's quote. He actually thought the competitor's quote was more detailed, but it was obviously built in Word or Excel or something.
Yeah.
Whereas our guy had this, very image-rich visual explaining sort of, proposal, almost a quote/brochure. And the homeowner, they could comprehend and retain the information on what was going to go on the project so much easier with something that was image rich as just opposed to this Word doc that was spitting out line item, all this stuff where our guy understood the jargon and everything, being communicated there. That homeowner didn't. We won that job. It was just a great example of how using something that communicates correctly with the homeowner positions you well to win more work.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Let's transition a little bit and let's talk about the industry in general and sort of what you're seeing out there, right? Because we are going through a pretty big shift, in business. Although, from the supplier side, it seems like demand is still pretty good in some markets, but obviously some markets are softening. So what are you seeing in what are your sort of predictions, I guess? Let's step outside of the SumoQuote realm for a moment and think about where do you see sort of the industry going? And I think to that point, on the back end of this, let's just hope that it's a year or so, down the road. What does the market look like then versus what it looks like now?
Yeah, there's 3 that I'll touch on here quick. So the first is, and we kind of commented a little bit on it earlier, but the first is we're coming into a recession. So what are the benefits of something like this? Well, we said from day one, it is cheaper for us to convert leads that we already have than to go out and find new leads. And so if we can spend our time and energy focusing on increasing our closing rate, as opposed to going out there and pounding more doors or trying to market for more leads out there, that is just going to be a more scalable way or more sustainable way to support our business, especially getting into, something around a recession here, right?
Yeah.
The second interesting one, I mentioned, one of these individuals that sold $8 million for our business last year. And we've got all inbound leads coming in. So we're not door knocking, but and we could get into that at some point. But this individual, he ended up moving to an island off the west coast of Canada. So he's way out there now. Like he's, hour and a half flight, 12-hour drive away, whatever it is out there. But I was like, you guys, we can't lose him. He's too good. So we set him up to be able to sell virtually. He's sold over $5 million this year already, sitting on an island off the west coast of Canada, not being anywhere near where we are actually performing
physically.
Yeah. So
when he's doing that with SumoQuote, explain that a little bit. So because he's able to present digitally, he's still having that same experience. And I think this is part of the challenge with our industry is we don't think about things like video calls, right? We're very used to getting into a truck and driving over there. Yeah. But let's be honest, that's not what consumers are used to experiencing. We might still like that or prefer that, but we're very comfortable now with Zoom. We're very comfortable with FaceTime. I mean, this is just the way the world works post-pandemic, and you can use that to your advantage.
Oh, absolutely. And again, it's highly scalable. So you can get far more volume through an individual if you set yourself up well like that. So here's a few things. I'm going to throw a few caveats on this.
Yeah.
One, like I would struggle to argue that statistically the best place to close a deal is at the kitchen table, right? Mm-hmm. I think that is still statistically the best place.
It's hard not to be, right? Yeah.
Yeah. So, but I think you can actually have far more powerful tools when selling digitally. And if you get those set up well, I think you can have a better buying experience there. And then if we're willing to consider the homeowner in this process, which I would argue we need to.
We probably should.
right?
They are the ones writing the check in the end.
They are the ones writing the checks. I would argue from a homeowner perspective, I can provide a better experience digitally than I can at the kitchen table, right? So if we got an air conditioner last year. So again, Canada, we don't need an air conditioner. Like it's not a requirement like Arizona, but we got one this last year. It's awesome. But I had the person want to meet with me at our house. And I was like, okay, great. Well, what that means is I got to get off work early and now I got to go home. My wife hasn't seen me. My kids are hungry and screaming. The house is a mess. Like, I don't want this person here. This is the last thing I want, right? If they could consider my buying experience in that, I would be so much more interested. If they made it convenient for me, fast for me, easy for me, that's the contractor that I want to work with. And I would argue we could do a better job of that virtually these days. But again, this isn't to say that you shouldn't do the kitchen table approach, because you can absolutely use SumoQuote in that scenario or whatever tool you're using. But to get our minds going outside of this, like we can sell virtually, and like we got a guy that sold $5 million this year. Like it can easily be done. It's not difficult to do, and it's highly scalable. And I think that's more of where the industry is going to start leaning, to your question earlier.
Yeah, no, and it's funny. I look back at the pandemic, and I think there's a lot of lessons that we can learn from it. One that we learned at the time, I was during the pandemic, I was running an electric vehicle company that made these big fat tire scooters that are all over the place here in Arizona, and we couldn't have people come into the showroom because of COVID. So one of the pivots that we made was we did these FaceTime test rides, where literally the sales guy would walk down and on FaceTime with you and walk around the showroom and show you everything and say, oh, which one do you like? Well, I think I like that one. Well, let me grab somebody. Well, how big are you? Well, I'm 5'3". Okay, hold on, let me grab somebody from the office that's 5'3" and step them beside it. And we closed a lot of business that way because we could do more, right? We could have more meetings. We could still have that face-to-face. We could still have that experience just in a digital setting that people at the time, we had to accommodate people. Now people want to be accommodated. They want to be able to do it from their office. They want to be able to do it from their phone. They don't really want you to come to the house.
No, absolutely. And I'm going to throw some more caveats in here, right? Because I talk these numbers and these are big numbers. Yeah. We still site visit everything before a quote is presented.
Sure.
So we get the inbound lead. We've got we call them a scoper, and we say, okay, here's your route of 10 properties. Go document them. This is exactly how you document a property, if it's retail or if it's insurance, and every photo. So they're all documented in the exact same way. So when it gets through, and then we order an Eagle View, and then when it gets through to that salesperson, it's like they were there. They've got everything totally consistent. It's like their eyes were on the property, and they can run a meeting with the homeowner virtually if they choose to do it that way, where the homeowner has that experience of, oh yeah, this is my roof, this is my house, this is this. You understand every component of it. They don't even ask, were you the one here or not? Typically, it's you can craft that type of experience in a very scalable way, and still give the homeowner a great experience with it. So get the details right. Make sure you site visit. Use a tool like Company Cam. Company Cam integrates with everything out there these days anyways. There's all sorts of ways that you can do this. And again, this is the stuff I love and my team loves. So they have these conversations with contractors every day in talking through how this stuff can be set up and really getting them empowered to scale their business.
Yeah. And I think it's really important because let's just be honest. I mean, anytime that there's a downturn, there's winners and losers. And the winners are usually the ones that take a little bit, instead of just being in the offensive position like they've always been in, they're just selling to the leads that they have. They start to take a little bit more of a defensive stance, and they say, okay, how can I protect myself against losing leads, losing business to, my competition, and standing apart, being able to accommodate people, as well as giving them a good digital experience, I think is really important. And the accommodation is important today. I mean, I'm working on something here this morning where we had to cancel an appointment this afternoon, and this busy CEO and I are trying to figure out the next time we can meet. And it's like 2.5 weeks from now, which is actually beyond the deadline of when we need this stuff done. It's like, oh man, what are we going to do? So we're making a decision. We're like, okay, I think we're going to do this on Zoom. That's just the nature of the world that we live in today. So you've got to be able to accommodate people like that. And I think when you do that, you end up closing more business just in general. When you can go to right where people are and work with them versus pulling them out of their life to have to deal with this contractor that's coming to take a look.
Yeah. Well, and a couple of things just on, again, we're coming into this potential recession here and stuff. There's two things I'm going to throw out, right? Like, so now we need to continue to find additional revenue out there. So to diversify with this stuff, the one would be, and this is typically an easy one, service departments. Have a service department when they go out there and they figure out whatever the deficiency is, wherever the leak is coming from, and they photograph that. They include that as a part of their quote, so it's showing it to them. The other thing I say is find two other things on the roof that doesn't look correct, and photograph those, include those in there, offer it as an optional upgrade, and for the homeowner to see that and be like, oh yeah, this looks wrong. Obviously, we should get this fixed too, and all I have to do is check this button. Easy, right? Like, so a service department, but one that you can also tell the story better, find those additional deficiencies, and sell those at the same time. It's easy money to bring in. The other one right now is the roofing industry just seems to be frothing over solar and the opportunity in solar, and there is margins in solar. SumoQuote is going to be launching our solar proposal tool in the next month or so here. And so it's going to be really exciting with this. But this concept of a project-based number, right? A roofing quote or a siding quote or whatever it is. It's just it's 10 grand, it's 12 grand versus a solar-based sale where it's, well, what consumption do you have? What production do you need? What offset can we produce for you? You know, what are your utility prices? How are those escalating historically? How does those monthly fees compare to, you know, a monthly financing fee? What the financing rates are? Like, it's a totally different type of sale. Yeah. We've got a very dynamic, powerful way to integrate those two together, which we haven't seen from anybody out there yet. So we're really, really excited about helping roofing contractors get into solar to help diversify their business. And there's all sorts of opportunity there that we're really excited about.
Yeah, and that I'm glad you mentioned that, because I think it is one of those trends where people, especially as energy prices continue to rise, you know, anybody that thinks, you know, prices are high now, trust me, they can go way higher. You know?
Absolutely.
It's just the nature of how things work. But you brought up an interesting point there that I want to go back to, because we talked about it earlier in the conversation, the financing piece. Yep. I think this is so important too, because let's be honest, who has $10,000 or $15,000 laying around to replace a roof in an emergency? Not many people. There's not a lot of neighborhoods where you can go through and people can just strike the check. So people are going to have to do something when it comes to finance. That might be credit cards. We've even heard this from contractors for the last couple of years. Well, I don't really like to accept credit cards. You know what? You better get used to doing it. You know, finance is another thing. If you offer finance options, and let's say it's a $10,000 roof, and you offer finance options, and the other two guys don't, who's going to get the business? There's no doubt you're going to get the business if the customer doesn't have that cash laying around.
Absolutely. Well, and SumoQuote, our goal is to always do things best in class. That anything we're building, we're going to do in a more dynamic, more thoughtful, more powerful way for our contractors to support them growing their businesses, right? So one of the little things we did with the integration that we did on the financing side, so for our good, better, best quotes, you can set a different financing plan for every quote. And so on the good, so when I'm demoing it, I often show them, hey, look, on the good, I did it as a 699 5-year. As on the better, I did the same thing, 699 as a 5-year. On the best, I did it as a 699 10-year. And so when they ends up showing the monthly fees on it, the best one ends up being the same price as the good or slightly below. And you can comment to the homeowner, hey, this is really the package you should be considering here. And look, we can make this affordable for you by just making this a 10-year financing plan as opposed to one of these other ones. And you're easy to make that convenient for them to be able to pick that top end product. Again, increasing closing rates, increasing margins, increasing upgrades, like all of these things that we love to do with our contractors.
Yeah. And I think it just providing that to customers. I mean, customers, if we always can go back to the car business, people don't shop for the price of the car. They shop for the payment. You know? And the reality is, if you've got a surprise repair on a roof that you haven't budgeted or prepared for, or let's say you've been saving to replace your roof or to have some repairs done for the last few years. Well, the cost to do the work now is way more than it was 2 years ago. I mean, it's just the nature of the cost of the materials has gone up. The labor costs have gone up. So you might find that it's out of budget. And being able to finance part of that is a big deal. I believe it was something like my last company, we added financing. It was like something like a 9% increase in our top line revenue just by adding financing, because we took a customer that was on the fence, that was like, how are we going to make this happen? And we gave them that option. And very, very quickly they closed because they were like, well, I can pay for it later. It's human nature. We want to push it out.
The interesting one is then you start getting in on the insurance side. So now you finance it, you spread those payments out, but the check that the insurance company writes, now you've got 20 grand, 30 grand that you can put in your bank account to help you personally through the homeowner personally through this time as well. Your ability to provide them with solutions to problems they didn't even know they had is really powerful and exciting as you go through it.
Yeah, that's amazing. So let's chat for a couple minutes here. It sounds like one thing that you're good at, Ryan, is lead gen, right? So how do you do that? I know it's not really what SumoQuote does, but because we're trying to educate contractors here on, we want to close more leads. I mean, I think you're right. Particularly if I'm dealing with an Angie's List or a Home Advisor or one of those guys, I'm already paying for the leads. If I close more, it's just better for me. Yep. But how do you think about lead gen? What are sort of the secrets from your experience on the lead gen side of things?
I know Joseph Hughes from Contractor Dynamics always talks about consistency, being consistent with things. Our roofing company's been around for over 20 years. So we certainly have, obviously we're going to have a lot of referrals coming in, but we're very intentional with our brand. We're intentional with gathering reviews. There's always going to be reviews that come in where somebody's like 1 star and you look at your CRM, you're like, who are you? I've never heard of you before. Right. But so, I mean, we keep all the reviews on there. We're, I think, 4.7. We fluctuate between 4.8 and 4.7, but we've got 700 reviews. Like there's nobody that's close to us with that. The customer experience is a big one. Asking for referrals at the end of the job is a big one. We do a little thing with SumoQuote because SumoQuote, it's really easy to turn pages on and off. And so you can use these pages in different ways, but we'll do a project summary report. So at the end of a job, hey, Mr. and Mrs. Homeowner. So our introduction page, we explain the details of them. We give them the brand of shingle and everything that we installed and a link to their warranty with their manufacturer. We show them photos of all of the work that was completed so that they can see all the flashings in place, all the new vents in place, overviews of the roof. We try and really give them that top end experience. And then we ask for a referral. We give them a warranty certificate, make them feel all warm and fuzzy, and we ask for a referral. And again, it's one of these things that at the end of a job, we audit everything. So the photos always go in. So once that file has come in and it's been audited, the person that sits at the front desk for us, in her spare time, she'll just crank out these project summary reports for us. Because really, it's just adding the same 6 photos over and over and over. And then it's done. And then you give it to the salesperson, and then they take it and they give it to the homeowner, and they look like an absolute hero at the end of the day. So it's all sorts of little touches and really being thoughtful on how do you always up the ante as from a customer experience perspective with this homeowner to keep standing out even after the job once it's done.
Yeah. And I think that's so important. And it goes back to a lot of what I like to talk about where, in any process, you have an input, a throughput, an output, and an outcome. And if we think about in roofing, we know what the input is, right? From a contractor's perspective, it's the lead, it's the materials, it's the throughput is getting the work done. The output is laying those shingles on the roof. But the outcome is really what matters to the customer. They don't really care how many shingles and nails and how many people were there. What they care about is that final job. And where roofing is a little different than so many other things is if I have a drywall contractor come in, I can walk with him and we can touch the wall and we can look at it and I can say, can you make a change here? And I can see the detail. It's a lot more difficult to get me up on the roof as a customer and walk through. So being able to show that attention to detail after the fact and being able to make them understand that trust that they put into you, in the end, it really paid off. And they've got that sort of visual representation of that. That is huge.
Oh, absolutely. Well, and you think about so that a quick project summary report, but we do that on our service jobs. So the
Yeah.
amount of calls that we continue to get back from property managers because we've solved their problem, we've documented and provided that to them, and then they look like a genius to their board because they pass that along to their board then, and their board's like, "This is awesome, perfect. Like we never get this stuff for any repairs being done on the building. Like, yep, just keep using that company." And property managers, as long as it's under a certain dollar value, they don't care what the price is. And they just keep sending you work, just solve their problems. They keep, so that ability to continue to diversify, create these experiences, especially coming into recession, those are all sorts of good things to be investing in as a company.
Yeah, and I think that's you've hit on so many good points, and I call this concept of sort of shoe sharing, and it's like we've all heard this, walking a mile in somebody else's shoes, but literally just put yourself in their shoes for a minute. Think about what they're seeing as the proposals that are coming to them. How do you make a decision? You know, that sort of zero moment of truth where you're sitting there with those three proposals, you and your spouse, and you're making a decision. You know, look at that through their eyes, then look at the job through their eyes. What are the experience when you say you're going to be there at 7 and you get there at 9? It means you're late. Like they don't really care what happened. It just means you were late to the job. And then at the close of that warm and fuzzy feeling that turns into the reviews and the referrals and all those kind of things. I know I realize that it takes a little bit of time, but that is what's going to be the difference between existing and not existing in a downturn.
Yeah,
it's what keeps you afloat. I say this all the time. People talk about the .com crash, and Ryan, you're probably old enough to remember the .com crash. The .com crash wasn't the end of .coms. It was actually the beginning of .coms. It was just getting rid of all the junk, all of the people who shouldn't have been there, and the people who really had a great user experience and had good utility and a good model survived. And I think the same thing happens anytime we go into a recession. There's always a washout. There's a belly washer that comes through. You don't want to be a part of that. You want to figure out how to modernize your business, improve the results you get, focus on the customers that you have, get more money out of them, get better closing ratios, make sure their experience is good, get the review. And it sounds like that's what you really do. You help provide those tools for them to do that.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, that is our focus on things. And I mean, it's a part of the greater game of things, right? So when you look at it, we're coming into a recession, and so in our market, because we get so much hail so consistently, we had 3 years where we had like zero, and it was kind of like the great reset, right? You talk about the .com crash, it's kind of the great reset where you see all these competitors out of the market, but you're there, you're stable, you're not making mass profits like you could potentially, but you've got a healthy balance sheet, you're diversifying into the right things, you're building the right tools and the right experiences, and that you're investing in these ways. And then when you do get through that, man, you can scale off at that. And the last couple of years here have just been, our profits have been very healthy. I'll just say, as we've had a couple of storms come through recently here, so it's well beyond what we had ever been able to experience in the past because we structured and set ourselves up so well during a tighter time of business.
Yeah, that scaling part is, coming out of the back end of a recession, that's a place where, immense growth happens because you've got your systems and processes in place that are dialed in and you know how to run the business. And then you can really focus on that great customer outcome and experience. Ryan, thank you so much for being here with me on this. This was really great to hear about SumoQuote. Maybe tell folks how to get started with SumoQuote. If they're interested in SumoQuote, what's the next step for them to do? And I guess one of the things that we didn't talk about, can they do this on their mobile? Can they do this from their laptop? Or do they need to be at home, like working? How does that work?
No, they can be on any device. We're responsive to anything. We're a web app, so you just log in and you're off to the races building this stuff. Homeowners, when you're presenting to them, an iPad is typically better than a phone just because it's a little bit bigger for them to see, but they can sign with their finger right on the iPad. Like everything is very kind of thoughtfully created for that experience. But yeah, all they have to do, go to SumoQuote.com, sign up for a free trial or book a demo. I would recommend even if you sign up for a free trial, jump on a demo because we're going to be able to answer those questions to ensure that it's crafted correctly for your business, that we integrate it properly into the systems that you've already got there. And then we're able to give you kind of a few extra tricks of the trade with stuff that we've learned in working with so many contractors as well. So yeah, jump on the website, grab a trial, grab a demo, you're off to the races. We love working with contractors on this.
I love it. Well, I love it too, because you've got you're not just there trying to sell the contractor. You actually have a roofing business, so you can give them some of that experience and knowledge and some of the things that you've all learned over the years on how to close more business. Ryan, thanks for being here with me. This was really fun.
Absolutely, Derrick. It's been a treat. Thanks for having me.
All right. Well, thanks for tuning in to another edition of Rooftalk by Elite Roofing Supply. And I'd invite you to check out SumoQuote. It looks like a really interesting tool that could help you win more deals and put more shingles on more roofs, which is what we all want in the long run. Okay, until next time.